Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is our monthly webinar, and this month, Choosing the Right Candidate. Great organizations know that success begins with hiring the right people. You've heard many times, we want to get the right people on the bus. I'm Cindy Davidson. I'm Director of Business Solutions here at Corexcel. And I'm here with Andrea Vi, who manages our webinar series. The webinar is being recorded, but your participation in, I think we have one poll this time, and some of the chat isn't recorded. So when you respond, please choose all participants or the host and presenter so that my partner Andrea can see your chats and help me read them to you. Today we're talking about hiring. And we're going to go over learning the role of a validated, data-driven selection tool in today's job market and tools that are available, discussing the options that people use for pre-hire assessment. And this is where I'm going to really ask your participation. Discover 4 steps to improve your hiring process. And again, along the way, we're going to explore the key components of the specific PXT Select pre-hire assessment. And you'll learn some things along the way as well about hiring. So why is it even important to talk about it? I'm probably, again, preaching to the choir here, but we're going to look at a few statistics. The first one may sound staggering. There's a well-known recruiter, Jorgen Sundberg, some of you may have heard of, who puts the cost of onboarding at $240,000. Now, that may sound staggering, but he's talking about actually the salary for a 2.5-year period of a person who doesn't work out, but they've been given 2.5 years. The hiring costs of that person, the eventual severance pay, perhaps other factors like legal fees, and based on, again, a mid-level manager who is terminated or replaced after 2.5 years, it can add up pretty quickly. On the lower end, the U.S. Department of Labor puts the price tag of a hire that doesn't work out at 30% of an employee's first-year earnings. So either way, it's a pretty costly deal. And for small companies, when you invest in the wrong person, it can be just devastating, a real threat to your business because you're looking at a loss of momentum, disruption to the team and relationships with customers. That can really threaten a small business. Employers no longer can rely on a resume and an interview, right? We've all tried that. We've all been down that path to make informed decisions on hiring. And talent leaders, for the most part, aren't convinced that they're measuring quality or even hiring effectively. 1 in 5 new hires don't work out. They either don't work out from the company's perspective or they have regrets once they join the organization. So we're going to, again, show you some ways that you may be able to avoid this. Let's look at a hypothetical, perhaps, but realistic example that you may be able to relate to. Okay, so here's Ben. So he applies for a manager position at your company. He submits a polished resume, has an impressive background, and you see that he's got extensive experience. He's enthusiastic. My gosh, he puts on a great face during the interview, stands out among candidates. He seems very positive. And guess what? His references check out. Everybody says, yes, I would hire him again. Seems perfect for the job. So you hire him. You hire him. Great resume, impressive background, seems right. And gosh, a couple months into the job, you're thinking, why isn't he as tenacious as he was in the interview? Gosh, it seems like he likes to work alone. I'm not sure about this team. He's avoiding, actually, his team members. And I don't see that sense of urgency, again, that I saw in the interview. And we've really got to pay attention to the numbers and the data that we're giving out on our quotes. And Ben's not all that accurate. So within 5 months, You see that he's a problem. And you're thinking to yourself, gosh, could we have known? So there are several options, and we certainly see people using options that are on the market. And what I'd like to understand from you as we go through these, Andrea will open a poll. I'd really like to understand what you folks are using today. So some people do use behavior and style assessments like DISC as part of their process of getting to know an individual. Personality and behavior assessments are not validated for hiring, but they will give you certainly an idea of someone's behavior. Some people do use skill assessments. They'll use things like, can this person do Microsoft Office? Certainly those of you who are hiring for a position like a driver, you've got your driver test that you will give. There are also values assessments on the market that can help determine work needs and motivations. And of course, then there are valid and reliable instruments like the one we're going to talk about today, the PXT assessment. Some of you may not have used any assessments. What does this look like for you? Can you just give me a sense of what kind of experience you have here? Anybody else want to weigh in? What do you use? Okay, we've got a couple coming in here. It looks like anybody else? Looks like we've got some skill assessments, a behavior assessment here. Okay, we're going to go forward. So this webinar today is informed by the PXT Select Hiring Assessment, and it is all about job fit. So this is about, can we fit an individual? Can we figure out if they really fit in their thinking style, their behavior traits, and their interest to the job that we have available? And the PXT uses what's called the job fit model. So here's where you'll get a little bit of history on assessments in general. The PXT assessment evaluates a person's cognitive abilities, their behavior traits, and interests. And what that reflects are 3 areas of an early model called the person-environment fit model. And it was really based on findings in the field of occupational research that dates back to 1909. And many of you in this field may know of the work of Frank Parsons, who developed what's called the Parsons tripartite model for vocational direction. And he proposed these 3 areas in addition to knowledge of the job market and an objective view of the relationship between one's own traits and available jobs. The bottom line is, it says people perform best when they are in jobs best suited to their abilities, their traits, and their interests. Makes sense, doesn't it? The initial framework evolved into Williamson's 1939, what was called the trait and factor theory of occupational choice. And it gave job matches increased precision by applying statistical measurements between individual traits and the factors required for success. Further work continued even through the late 1990s to further refine the process. And again, it suggests that people are drawn to environments that allow them to express their traits behaviorally, and that again, the fit results in significant desirable outcomes. And the outcomes are both for an employer as well as the individual taking a job. Organizational psychologists, career coaches, and HR practitioners all agree that individuals perform best when they hold positions that match their traits. Oops, I think we missed one here. So taken together again, it's a conceptual framework for matching personality, ability with job requirements. And as we go through here, you'll see that the PXT Select performance model library consists of over 135 job performance models that outline specific traits for specific jobs and organizations. And we're going to take a look at samples here. So the first in identifying traits is identifying what is called the performance model. And this is the first page in a sample of the model. And the colored bars you see here in each area are the score ranges based on traits of people who have been successful in the job. So this is a sample performance model for a specific job. And you can see here, it'll give you a composite score on a thinking style, and then it will go through each attribute of those styles. It goes through 9 behavior traits, and then the interest part is at the bottom. But your colored bars are where the ideal candidate for this position should land. So step 2 is matching each qualified candidate to the traits. So a candidate takes a 60 to 90 minute assessment, and then those results are calculated on the performance model. So you can see here our sample candidate is Oliver Chase, the OC, and you can see where he lands. Overall, he fits the model, and it's mainly due to his thinking style. His overall fit is a 70%. His thinking style is at a 79%. His behavioral traits are a little low there, 59%, and then his interests are 72%. So we're going to walk through each of these in more detail. And here we see, again, the cognitive abilities part. You see a composite score and then each area starting with verbal skill. So we'll define each one of these. What's verbal skill? It's a measure of vocabulary. What respondents do is identify synonyms to words. Verbal reasoning measures the ability to use words in reasoning and problem solving. And that's done by asking respondents to complete analogies. On the numerical skill, it measures ability to complete calculations, and numeric reasoning measures how well an individual can use numbers to solve problems. The thinking style piece contributes 40% to the overall fit for the job. How are we doing so far? And please feel free to use chat along the way and let me know if this is going too fast or slow for you, or if you have questions. You're certainly welcome to pose them, and we'll try to pick them up and answer them along the way for you. So how are we doing so far? Anybody have any thoughts coming to mind? We'll go forward here then. In the behavioral traits section, participants are asked to agree or disagree with statements of work-related preferences in these 9 areas. So pace, assertiveness, sociability, conformity, outlook, decisiveness, accommodation, independence, and judgment. And each of them are defined for you as well. Just as in the thinking style, behavior traits contribute 40% to the overall job fit. And you can see here where areas where Oliver Chase is right on with pace. And with assertiveness, he's more forceful than this position requires. So again, we'll look at these examples and what kind of information comes to you from the assessment. On the interests, the participants are asked to rate their level of enjoyment of various activities. So it measures their degree of interest in the 6 areas listed here. You can see technical, creative, financial, administrative, enterprising, people, service, and mechanical. It's done in what they call a paired comparison format. Respondents are asked whether they would be somewhat prefer one activity over another or highly prefer. And this is based on, again, early research, what's called John Holland's RIASEC classification or model from 1959. And interests contribute less than the other 2 areas, just 20%. because many times interests are adequately filled outside of a job. It still is a consideration, just to a lesser degree. Probably the best example in my life was one of my first sales managers who actually came from accounting, and I was very intrigued as to how he ended up in sales management from accounting. And basically, he just, went to school for accounting. He thought that's what he wanted to do. He spent several years in a position and was absolutely miserable. So unfortunately for Tom, it took him a while to discover what his true interests and what really a position that would really fit him better in terms of his behavior style. So in review, again, candidates' cognitive abilities, behavioral traits, and interests account for a large percentage of the predictors of success. Others, of course, are exploring a candidate's work experience history, knowledge of the job, any additional technical skills required. So your assessment is only a piece of the puzzle. In fact, it's supposed to be no more than a third of your decision. And it's going to help you, however, to explore other areas in the interview process. From a candidate's perspective, what does this look like? Each candidate actually receives an assessment that's unique to them. So it's the same basic assessment, but it changes based on their answers by the use of what's called adaptive testing. So in the cognitive section, for example, they will get increasingly more difficult questions in response to correct answers, easier questions following incorrect answers. So it really provides the results on those outer ranges for them. Behavioral items are presented in a similar format. Increasingly stronger worded statements are given following each endorsed item. And questions are presented on a scale in one direction of difficulty or behavioral expression. So it does reduce testing time because it gets to where is this candidate pretty quickly, and it does maximize the precision in the measurement. How are we doing so far? Again, any comments, any questions coming in? So we'll take a look at some of the pages in the report. Remember, in this sample for Oliver, the comprehensive selection report told us he fit the model overall, and in his composite score, the thinking style also said he fit the model. This is the performance model. And it gives, in the comprehensive selection report detail, it shows, all right, where is Oliver? So here the ideal candidate, it gives you the description. The ideal candidate assimilates information with minimal confusion, can handle more complex information processing. Oliver fits the model here. And in looking further, the model is looking for someone in the thinking style who scores above a 6.5 on numerical ability. You'll see that here where Oliver does fit, describing that to mean that the ideal candidate performs intricate calculations. On numeric reasoning, you see, again, an explanation of the ideal candidate. And you see here that Oliver actually analyzes numerical data at a more advanced level than the position requires. And sometimes people think that, oh gosh, the further right you are on the scale in thinking style, the better. But actually, in this way, the organization may be challenged at keeping Oliver interested and challenged enough in this position. So he may have unused talents in this job. All right, let's look at an example in behavior. We talked a little bit about pace. So, the ideal candidate, again, for pace said, very active and results driven. For assertiveness, the ideal candidate it says little need to have influence over others and instead is content to follow direction in an amicable environment. But where Oliver is, if you see here on the assertiveness scale, he is actually more forceful, wishes to assert a stronger presence. On the sociability, which is the third one down after the page break here, you'll see that he prefers less interaction. On conformity, overall, he fits the model. So again, fits the model on the pace, may be more forceful on the assertiveness, and it gives you, again, an explanation of where each candidate is. All right, on the interest, the overall description here is one that ties these three together. So it'll tell you, again, the performance model says, for this position, ideal candidate would be enterprising, would be interested in people service, and financial. And again, the ideal candidate says motivated to attend to detailed aspects of a position while focusing on profit issues, balancing administrative side of work, and appreciates leading but also cooperating. And then it'll show you in the comprehensive report, again, where each candidate falls. So in this area, you see that Oliver is really down here on the financial administrative, enterprising, and people service. It's in a different order than what the ideal candidate looks like. He's actually kind of the third financial and the enterprising is actually 1, 2, 3, 4th down for him, and the people service is let's see, 5th down for him, where it's really second for the ideal candidate. Again, interests are often satisfied outside of work, but still they can provide insight into maybe how easily motivated someone will be or how much enjoyment they'll get from a particular role. We're going to move on now to number 3 step in improving hiring process, which is increasing the consistency and efficiency of interviews. And since you aren't necessarily going to exclude candidates based solely on their assessment, of course, if their scores are extremely low, you may do that. It does give you a roadmap of areas to explore and specific interview questions to ask so that you can be more efficient and consistent in your process. So here's where I'd like to ask again, if you wouldn't mind chatting with us. What do you see as your main challenges in interviewing? What do you see? So I'm seeing here maybe some, developing effective questions. Consistency among stakeholders. Boy, that was the thing that when I was doing a lot of interviewing in my past, I saw to be a real challenge. Length of interviews, the process, understanding the impact of their actions. What else? Anything else here? So this section reviews. In the interview section, it will give you the priorities. So where are the challenge areas for this candidate for this job fit? So for example, on assertiveness that we talked about, he is more forceful than the performance model. He's fairly comfortable sticking up for his opinions and needs. So it's suggesting that you ask Oliver, when working with a team, how do you get buy-in? Can you describe a situation where you felt it was best to defer to others? And it gives you what you should listen for. You've got to listen for how willing he is to soften his level of assertiveness or defer to others when a situation calls for it. How awesome is that? Really defining for you what area you want to focus on, how you want to focus on it, and really provides that consistency. So here again, more areas. He's more deliberate than the performance model in decisiveness. It will give you similar information as to the assertiveness piece. And on verbal skill, he's above their performance model. So it's going to talk with you about what do you want to explore with him around verbal skill. It will also give you where he is strong. Where does he fit the performance model most, so that you can confirm your understandings as well, and kind of verify where this candidate is. So again, verbal reasoning, he fits the model very well. You really want to listen for how he does assess and apply information for different settings. Seems he does it very well. It's still going to provide questions to verify, describe a situation in which you received instructions that seem to lack key steps. How did you fix the situation? How did you make sure that you were completing the task? Again, same for numerical ability and pace. He fits the model. It's still going to give you information about that, areas to really focus on. And then it does give you the same information for every area, so that, for example, if you had a culture that was different in pace, and even though someone met the model, you really wanted to explore the pace area, you could certainly do that. Gives you the questions to do that. You'll be comparing candidates in the process, and the PXT helps you do that. So in this example, this company chose to give the assessment to 5 candidates who made it through their resume screen, their initial phone screen, background and reference check. So they narrow it down to 5, and they say, okay, we want to see how well these candidates fit the model. And you can run a report that compares them to each other. And what it will do is it will show you again where they compare each on each scale. So here is the thinking style, and you can see where each candidate falls. And just to blow one up here, the numerical ability, you can see that Oliver's the only one that fits the numerical ability. So that's where you'll want to focus your interview questions, and it will allow you again to be consistent that, wow, you know, we're gonna ask this same question to all of these candidates to see what we will need to do if we have the resources to help these people that aren't where they need to be on the numerical ability scale, if we decide that overall they fit the model. On the behavioral traits, same. You'll see a sample here. Most of the candidates here are more forceful than the model calls for, so that's an area of focus for your interviews. And on interest, just one candidate holds the #1 interest of being enterprising. Step number 4, perhaps you're interviewing for multiple positions at the same time, and you'll want to consider candidates who see or respond to a job posting for one position, but not another. Sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves based on where we've spent the most time, which can be a fairly narrow view. But also, many times we forget the step of leveraging the time and energy we've spent with a candidate that isn't selected this time for this position, but we've identified that they're a person, either an internal candidate we want to keep in our organization, or an external candidate that we would like to attract to our organization and perhaps with another position. So maybe they're not the best choice for this job at this time, but they could have tremendous value at another time. And PXT allows you to explore that for no additional cost. Someone also, when we were looking at what you would really like to hear from this webinar, someone said, I'd really like to understand how to use reports to motivate employees, long-term employees. And this can be one way to do it. You can run that employee against, once they've taken an assessment, you can run them against as many performance models for as many jobs in your company as you'd like, to see if there's another fit, something else that may challenge this long-term employee. And here you can see, that Oliver may have been interviewing originally for this sample position, but he has a better fit in some of the other positions that the company has available. How are we doing so far? Anybody else have any questions coming in? Any comments? Anything you want to hear about differently? Okay, we're going to go on here. So multiple positions report, again, it will give you then, you'll be able to run the report for each of these positions. So he fit the specialist position, he had the highest fit here, and it's going to give you all the detail about that. Overall, similar to the comprehensive selection report. So in summary, what we've covered so far is we're about 3/4 of the way done here. The performance model, comprehensive selection report, the multiple candidates report, and multiple positions report. Those are the main reports that are used to hire someone in that pre-hire process. We're going to now review some reports that are going to help you. Some of them can also help you in the interview, but most of them help you onboard and really manage your new hire, help them integrate into an existing team, helps you coach their job skills and behavior and develop their talents. And again, all of these reports are included in the one assessment fee. So here's a report that is available that you can give to an individual. Some companies give this to their final candidates. Most companies wait until an individual is on board, and then they share it with the employee to give them some self-awareness perspective in, again, coming into their new organization. The left side is the narrative report that's called the feedback report. The right side is the graph. And you can see here, if you just look at the first line, it is very positive feedback in a friendly way that the new employee would be getting. You are almost always able to adapt to a variety of training situations. It doesn't give them the performance model if you look at the right on the graph, because it doesn't want to put in the mind of the employee that they were perhaps outside of the performance model in some way. That is really comes to you from a report that we're going to talk about, either the coaching report or the manager report, so that someone in the organization has a chance to talk with an individual about that, and they don't have room for their self-interpretation. So again, just more detail on the individual's feedback report. An example, you can see here some of the language that's used. Second line, it's likely that this candidate, this new employee, will find it easy to learn the new requirements of a job. And I think this is a really positive way for somebody to start out. How nice that they know they've taken 60 to 90 minutes of their time, all of the time that they've invested in the interview process, and here you are with a very professional document to give them some feedback. So here's a coaching report, and what's different, again, you can see that all the reports follow kind of the same pattern, but what's different is the narrative. It's the coaching report is written to the new employee's boss, and it's a review of all the attributes contained that we went over in the comprehensive selection report. But again, you can see it's written to the manager. So what does this manager need to know about Oliver? He's an effective learner who may appreciate a challenge while training on new tasks. And what does it mean in terms of the tips for managing him? Well, keep his workload and training challenging enough so he doesn't get bored and lose interest. Companies that integrate PXT into their organization, they begin using it as a hiring tool, but as they go along and they've got now several people on a team who have gone through the PXT, you can begin to run team reports. And so in this example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people have taken an assessment, and so you can run a team report to see where all of the team members fall on the performance model scale. And you can see, so you've got one unassuming team member, and 3 on one side of the unassuming, and 3 that are a bit more forceful. So you can begin to understand, the points to consider here. Where is everyone? And then what does it look like for the team? What do you want to consider? So, and again, the team reports, you run one for each team member that talks to them specifically but gives them the team information. So the first line here, like some of your teammates tend to be direct when giving feedback and communicating necessary changes, but you've got unassuming members, point number 2, that may not have much of a need to be heard, so you've got to be careful about half the team dominating the team discussion. There is a manager-employee report, a little different than the coaching report. This actually, again, if managers decide to take the assessment before they give it to candidates, then they can actually run a manager-employee report that shows their attributes in behavior against the employee's attributes and what to consider. So here, the manager is less forceful than the employee. What does that mean in their working together? And what do the tendencies look like? What are the considerations? So in summary, the assessment that you just saw, the PXT Select, it does meet the U.S. Department of Labor's guidelines for testing and assessment. And what the U.S. Department of Labor says, and you can pull there, it's called Testing and Assessment, an Employer's Guide to Good Practices. You can pull the entire guide. It's pretty in-depth, but the test measures what it claims to measure. For example, if you're giving a test of mental ability, does it in fact measure that and not some other characteristic? That the test is job relevant. In other words, it measures one or more characteristics that are important to the job. By using the test, you really are improving, making more effective employment decisions about individuals. And then also the degree to which a test is reliable and valid. So if you're looking at what is to be considered a reliable and valid hiring assessment, not just a behavior or personality assessment, you really want to look at the research report and make sure that it does align with the Department of Labor standards. For example, an example of reliability is if a person were to take a test again, would they get a similar test score? You shouldn't have a wide variance in a person taking the same test at different times. So here's a quick review of the suite. These reports feel like a roadmap to me. So the first part is, what reports am I going to use to help me hire? The comprehensive selection report, the multiple candidates report, a multiple positions report. You can use some of these other individual reports in hiring, and some people do have the discussion with the candidate, with a final candidate, about their individual report, and it becomes sort of their final interview to see, gee, how appreciative is someone of self-awareness, of something that a report is going to share with them. And that really can start a conversation about building a culture of trust. And then, of course, the coaching, the manager-employee report, these are just ongoing information that you can use for as long as the employee is with you. Just really gives clear guidelines on responsibilities and expectations and what kind of training is going to be involved here. And then finally, again, back to the comprehensive selection report, back to one of the questions that I got in the beginning, how can we use an assessment tool to help us with career planning? Well, I think you can see, again, when somebody takes an assessment, let's say you're hiring them for an entry-level type position, but you have within your organization, you know that you're growing quickly and you want to make sure that you're hiring people that may have the attributes for the next job and the next job after that. So if you're interested, we can work with you to develop a unique plan for your organization. We have 4 team members here at Corexcel that are accredited in the PXT Select assessment. A candidate takes the assessment one time. It takes them 60 to 90 minutes. It makes available all of these reports that we have just reviewed for one fee of $295. There are quantity discounts available. We also included administrative accounts so that you can administer your own assessments. Some of you are familiar with the Epic account that we have for everything DISC and DISC Classic profiles. This is similar in that you would be able to administer your own assessments. We also provide 3-hour virtual staff training on the assessment and on the platform to administer the assessments at no charge. So again, I thank you very much for joining me. We're just about at that 45-minute mark. Please thank me by filling out our survey that you receive. I would really appreciate your candid feedback. If you'd like additional links to the Department of Labor documents I referenced, you're welcome to send me an email, and I'm happy to provide those links to you. In addition, you'll be receiving a link to the recording. You're welcome to share it with others. And also a link to all the PXT information is available on our website. You can download sample reports. You can see the volume pricing there. Everything really is available. So next month, please join us again. We're going to be a bit earlier in the month because of the holidays. We'll be talking about resolving conflicts, and we're actually going to introduce a new Everything DISC Productive Conflict Profile. It will be held Thursday, November 16th at the same time. If any of you have any questions and want to stay on the line, please just write me a chat. I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to set up a time outside of this webinar to revisit with me, we can do that as well. Again, thank you.